Welcome. We are going to work in the next couple of sessions on the use of context and models in mathematics education, in realistic mathematics education. We, that is here in the Netherlands, Maarten Dolk, that's me, Frans van Galen, Michiel Doorman and Dolly van Eere. You might meet them later on in these sessions. And we are going to work on realistic mathematics and how to develop children to develop their mathematical knowledge. Now, we use context in realistic mathematics. And the reason why we use it is because we think that it helps children to understand what they are doing, to realize what they are doing. And there are more functions of context. It's not just motivation. There are many functions. And in this couple of sessions we will be investigating what possible functions are and what the effect of context is. So one of the things you need to know is what is a good context? What decides that the context will work in your situation in Indonesia? And that is a different argument than what makes a good context in the United States or in Malaysia or in the Netherlands, because the culture and the knowledge, the informal knowledge of children about the context is different. So not every context will work automatically. If you see a context that's been successful in the Netherlands, it might not work in Indonesia. So one of the questions, and we will work on that too, is how do you design a good context? You see something, because teachers will read a lot about what is done in other countries, and you see a context that they tried in Japan, and now you have to say, okay, do my children know about this culture? Do my children know about what is implied in this context? Or do I have to change that? Or you want the children to develop some mathematical knowledge and you even start from scratch to develop and to design a context yourself. What is a good context and how do I design a good context? Now, once you have a good context, the next step is how do I want teachers to introduce that context in a classroom? And now we are talking about the role of the teacher. So just telling a story is often not enough. You have to do more. But what is it you have to do? How do I get my children so involved in the context that they will really work with the context and not just throw it out and only listen to the numbers and work with the numbers? And once I've introduced the context as a teacher, my next step is to support my children in the investigation. I have to support children individually or in a small group, and I have to work with the whole group. And I have to think about how I can develop children in their development of mathematical knowledge. Because working in a context is not automatically developing mathematical knowledge. I have to do more. The context is the starting point. Finding an answer is great, but that is not why we do the context and the investigation. It is not about the answer. We design a context so that we can develop mathematical knowledge. But what is it, as a teacher, I have to do that? Now, before we start discussing all that, we'd like you to do an investigation yourself. And we present an investigation that we have done with American students. So I know it might not be meaningful to Indonesian students, but you are much older, you can imagine the situation, so we start with this American context. And it's about submarine sandwiches. Submarine sandwiches are very big sandwiches. 1 foot, 2 feet. 2 feet is about 60 centimeters of one sandwich. Well, you can understand you don't eat all of that, so you slice it in different parts. And if you have a group of students, you share parts of those different sandwiches. And students in the United States are used to do that. Now, let's go to the context. It's about a field trip, and students are sent out in small groups to different locations in town, and each of those groups get a number of sandwiches. Here you see 5 children, and they were given 4 sandwiches to share and as lunch. And here are 4 children and they are given 3 sandwiches to share. And here are 8 children and they are given 7 sandwiches. When you introduce this in a class, many children think it's fair, because there is always 1 sandwich less than there are children. Well, mathematically that's not correct. And I know that you know that. Children don't know that yet. So, the last group, 5 children, 3 sandwiches. And all the children immediately say that is not fair. And that allows you to ask questions about who will get the most and who will get the least. If you want to eat a lot, which would be the best group to be a member of? And if you're a small eater, in what group would you sit? What I'd like you to do is to think about, is it fair? Well, I already told you it's not fair. Which group get the most? And how much does a child get in each of those groups? Solve the problem yourself. Take some time, solve it. Then discuss in a small group of your peers and later in a whole group the different solutions, the different ways you solved the problem. And after that discussion, come back and watch our next video. Have fun!